What's going on, guys? John Elder here from Codemy.com, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to install Ruby on Rails on a Windows computer. Okay, so before we get started, I want to spend just a minute talking about some of the things that we're going to need. So in order to install Ruby on Rails on a Windows computer, we have to download all kinds of different things. First off, we have to download Node. Now, Node is the JavaScript web framework, and it's kind of weird that we need that in order to install and run Ruby on Rails, but for some reason we do, so we'll do that in the next video. We also need a text editor, something to write our code on. We're going to be using the Sublime Text editor. If you have some other text editor that you like using, absolutely feel free to use that. You can use anything you want, it really doesn't matter. But I like Sublime, it's totally free, so we're going to download that. We also need a terminal, something to write our commands on. And we're going to be using something called Git Bash, it's also free. And if you're on a Mac or Linux, you can use the terminal that comes with Mac or Linux. You just go up to the top of your screen, the little search thing on your operating system, type in terminal, and it'll work fine. Windows users, we have a couple of terminal command prompt type things. We have something called the PowerShell and the command prompt, which come with Windows, but they don't really work that well. They don't allow us to do version control that well. And there's some other little things about them that aren't great. So we're going to use the Git Bash Terminal. It's very similar to what you're going to use on a Mac or a Linux, so it's all sort of nice and easy for everyone to follow along if you're on a different operating system. We also need something called the Heroku Toolbelt. We're going to be pushing our code up to Heroku for third-party web hosting, and we need some software to do that behind the scenes. It's also free, and I think that might be it. Of course, we also have to download and install Ruby on Rails. We'll get to that in a bit too. So a lot of things we need to do, but they're all free. They're all real easy to install. And we're going to spend the next few videos sort of downloading and installing those. So that'll be coming up in the next video. Okay, so first things first, we need to install Node.js. Now, this is kind of weird for me. I'm not a big Node person. I use it. I know how to use it, but sort of having to install it in order to install Ruby on Rails doesn't quite sit right with me for some reason. It's just kind of weird, but not a big deal. Chances are you already have Node on your computer because a lot of programs require Node, and it'll sort of download in the background when you install something else. So there's a pretty good chance you have it, and if you do, we're going to want to uninstall it first. And the reason why is because we want the latest, greatest version of Node, and sometimes, especially if Node got installed sort of behind the scenes with something else, it might have been a very old version of Node. So that might not work with the newest version of Ruby on Rails. So we just want to kind of clear the slate and make sure we get rid of it before we get started. So I'm going to come to my Windows command or control panel, and I just found this on the Windows Start menu, and come down here to uninstall a program. And then I'm just going to click anywhere and then type the N key on my keyboard. And you see here Node.js. I do in fact have it installed already. So I'm just going to right click and click uninstall. And are you sure? Yes, blah, blah, blah. Let me get this little thing, preparing to remove. Go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to go ahead and pause the video very quickly here while this sort of does its thing. There's nothing for us to do. It'll remove it for us, and then we'll get a little message when it finishes. So I'm going to pause the video. We'll pick it up right when this finishes. Okay, so that little screen just disappeared. That means that it was removed successfully. We didn't get any other sort of confirmation, but that's all we need. So now we just head over to our web browser and then just type in Node. And I'm just going to search for Node at Google. The first thing that pops up, nodejs.org, is what we want. And you'll notice when we come here, it comes straight to the download page. Right? There's not even anything to read. Just boom, here's your download. And there's two different versions. The 10.15.3 LTS, which stands for long-term support, I believe, and then 12.1.0 current. And this has the latest features. Now, if these numbers are different by the time you watch this video, they probably will be. These are always, updating and, putting out newer versions. No big deal. Just download the most recent ones. Whatever's listed there is going to be okay. So which one of these do we want? We want this LTS one. Now, you're going to see this 12.1 and you're going to be like, ooh, that's a higher number. I want that one. But you probably shouldn't. This is the one that's sort of like the most current stable version, and that's what we want. We don't want the one with the latest, greatest test features or whatever. We want the one that we know is going to work. And so that's this one right here. So go ahead and click this, and we can save this anywhere we want. I'm just going to save it to my desktop. Click save, and it downloads really quickly. It's not a very big file. So To install this, we just come down here and click it, or you can navigate to your desktop or wherever you saved it and double click it there. I'm just going to click this, and we have this thing. Yes, we want to run it, and we see this. Now, if you didn't uninstall it first and you did have Node on your computer, you're going to see a different screen. You're going to see something that asks whether you want to update or remove or fix or do something like that. So you're going to want to uninstall the old one first, so just follow those prompts. But for everybody else who's followed along so far, you'll see this screen. Click next. You got the license. Next. You can install this anywhere. I'm just going to take the default. And don't change anything here. Click next. And then install. And this will go ahead and install. It'll take a couple of minutes, so I'll go ahead and pause this in just a second. But one thing I will mention is when this finishes installing, it doesn't tell you to restart your computer. You know, when you install things, a lot of times it'll say, installation complete, please restart your computer. Node does not do that, but I'm telling you right now, you definitely want to restart your computer. It's just, Node is just one of those things. You just want to give your computer a quick restart. It won't tell you to do it, like I said, but just go ahead and do it anyway. So we are almost done with this, I think. So I will maybe pause or maybe just talk for a minute until this creeps along. Yeah. All right, here we go. Come on. Okay, so Node.js has been successfully installed. We're good to go. Like I said, there's no mention of restarting your computer, but listen to me, you're not going to want to. Nobody likes restarting their computer, but do it. It's important. If you don't, chances are a lot higher we're going to have an error later on when we install Ruby on Rails. And Rails is hard enough to install as it is. We don't want to add any other optional sort of problems into the mix. So restart your computer, click finish first, and then that'll be good. So in the next video, we'll install our text editor and our Git Bash terminal. Okay, so we've got Node installed. We're good there. Next, I want to talk about installing our text editor. And this is the text editor we're going to be using. It's called Sublime Text. It's just a basic coding text editor. Like I said earlier, if you have some editor that you like to use, Visual Studio Code or Notepad++ or anything at all, if you're comfortable using that, feel free to use that. Absolutely. Use whatever you want. It really doesn't matter what text editor you use, but Sublime Text is an industry standard. Most people use it. Seems like one of the most popular ones. Totally free. If you want, you can throw those guys some money. Every once in a while, a little box will pop up asking for a donation. You can or you don't have to do that, so sort of keep that in mind. So I'm going to head over to Google again, type in Sublime Text. First thing that pops up is the sublimetext.com website. And this is it. So to download this, you just click this link right here. And right now we're on Sublime Text 3, build 3207. It will likely change that number by the time you watch this video. No big deal. Download whatever current version it is. And it's the same thing. You just click this. We can save it anywhere. Save it to your desktop. It'll download and then just click that button. I'm not going to walk you through this one because it's super simple. There's nothing for you to do. Just take the defaults, click next, and it will start. In order to use the Sublime Text, just go to your Windows Start menu, type in Sublime, and it'll pop right up. So the next thing we need, and the more important thing, is the Git Bash Terminal. So I'm going to go Git Bash at Google here, and the first thing that pops up is this git-scm.com/downloads. And that's what we want. And right here, we're on version 2.21.0. Again, if it's a different version by the time you watch this, no big deal. Download whatever the latest version is. And remember, if you're on a Mac or a Linux, you can download this, but you don't need to. You can just use the terminal that comes with Mac or Linux. It works just as well as the Git Bash terminal. I think it is a Bash terminal, so you're good to go there. So go ahead and click this to download, and it will pop up automatically. Download it to your desktop. Now this is, I think, 40 megabytes, but it takes a long time to download for some reason. It always has. I have high-speed internet. It should download in like 2 seconds, and it's already been like 15 seconds now. So for some reason, it's always been like that. So if it takes a little while to download, no big deal. Just go ahead and wait. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while we wait, and we'll pick it up as soon as this finishes downloading. Okay, so it's finished downloading. And again, you can navigate to your desktop and click it there, or just come down here and click it and open this and click run. Let me pull this over. Okay, so general license, click next. Don't make any of these changes. Any changes in here. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Just we want all the defaults here. Now this is kind of weird. It asks you what text editor you're going to be using, and it happens to have the Sublime Text as the default one, but there's a whole bunch of different ones you can pick. But the weird thing is, we never use the Git Bash Terminal with a text editor. They're two separate things. So I have no idea why they ask this. It's not like it integrates into the text editor in any way. So you can just ignore this. If you're not using Sublime Text, you don't have to go in and find the one that you're using. Just click Next. It's just a weird thing. Next, we want this bottom button to be checked. It's the default one, so click Next. And again, we want this checked. Also, it's the default. SSH is a secure key thing that we're going to be using to connect to things like Heroku and GitHub.com for version control. We'll talk about that later on. Same thing with this OpenSSL library. We want that checked. And this top checkout window style, this doesn't really matter, but we could just go ahead and leave that as the default. Same thing with this min TTY thing. And finally, leave these two default. And then come down here and click install. Now, I've already installed this, so I'm not going to do this last step, but you will obviously click this install button, and the little box will pop up, and you get the scroll bar, and it'll show you the status and all that. You just wait for it to install, and you're good to go. Same thing with the Sublime Text Editor. If you want to run this, you just go to your Windows Start menu. Go ahead and click Cancel. And this is off screen, so you can't see, but it's just Git Bash. You just type that into the search, and it'll pop up. Let me pull this over. And this is the Git Bash Terminal. We'll talk about this a little bit more probably in the next video. In fact, in the next video, we will look at this, and I'll show you how to set up the SSH key. This will allow us to securely connect to, like I said, other websites like GitHub.com to push our code up for version control, Heroku to push our code up for web hosting, things like that. You need an SSH key, so we'll generate one of those in the next video. Okay, in this video, I want to generate an SSH key with our Git Bash terminal. So Ruby on Rails requires, I believe at this point, a SSH key for some stuff behind the scenes, but we also need one to push our code up to GitHub for version control. We'll talk about that in a bit, and also to push our code up to Heroku. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So we just need an SSH key. It's just a security thing we need to do. So I've opened up the Git Bash terminal, and if you see here, this up a bit, there we go. If I type in pwd, now if you don't know how to use this terminal, no big deal. I'm going to show you some commands here and there, and you only need a few, so there's nothing really you need to learn. So just sort of follow along here. pwd shows us what directory we're in. And you can see we're in c/users/flatplanet. Flatplanet is the name of my computer. It's the username that I'm logged in as. I don't think the world is flat. I just find it hilarious that people do. So I kind of name my computer that. Whatever your username is, your computer name, whatever that is, it'll be there. So that's what you want. So the first thing we need to do is create a directory to hold our SSH key. And we just use the mkdir command, stands for make directory. And then just type /SSH. And a period on a directory means that the directory is hidden. The folder is hidden. It won't show up. And that's what we want for security related SSH keys. So that's how we do that. Okay, so now we need to move into that directory. We need to change directory. So we use the cd command, change directory, and then just type .ssh. And if we type in pwd again, you see we are in fact in flatplanet/SSH. You can also notice it says it right there. So now if we type ls to list the stuff that's in this directory, there's nothing there. So that's good. I'm going to type clear to clear the screen. So now we just need to generate our SSH key. And it's super easy. It used to be hard in the old days. You used to have to download some software to do it. Now it's built right into this Git Bash terminal, which is one of the nice things about it. One of the reasons why we use it, because it has stuff like that just built in, which is very cool. So to generate an SSH key, we just type in ssh-keygen.exe. This is going to run a little program that generates our key for us. And it's asking us where we want to save this. And we just want to save it in this directory, so we could just hit enter. And now it's asking for a passphrase. And whenever we try and push our code up to Heroku or push our code up to GitHub, if we pick a password right now, it will ask for this password forever. So you need to remember what that password is. Personally, I don't ever really do that. I just leave this blank. And in that case, when we push our code up to GitHub later on, it won't even ask for the password. So it's just one last thing to remember. I don't think hackers are going to steal anything with this. So like an extra password on top of this seems to me not necessary. But if you want a password, type it in there. If you type it in right now, nothing will appear on the screen. That's a security feature. So don't worry, it is actually typing it in. So just type it in and hit enter. Nothing will appear on the screen. But for me right now, I'm not even going to do that. I'm just going to hit enter. And then it says enter the same passphrase again. I hit enter again. And boom, it's generated our key. So if I clear the screen, now if we type in ls to list the stuff in our directory, we see these two files, id_rsa and id_rsa pub. And this is what we want. This is the public key. And later on, we're going to have to take this key and upload it to GitHub or wherever else we want to use it. And so we'll do that later on. But if we want to just look at it right now, we can type cat to catalog the file and then id_rsa.pub. And you can see this whole thing is our SSH key. It looks like a bunch of gobbledygook. It's just a security hash type thing. And no big deal. We have it now and we're good to go. So that's all there is to that. In the next video, we'll go ahead and install, I think the last thing we need to install before Rails, the Heroku Toolbelt, and that'll allow us to push our code up to web hosting for free later on, which is very cool. So we'll look at that in the next video. Okay, so we've got our SSH key. Now we want to install the Heroku Toolbelt. And Heroku, if you're not aware, is a third-party web hosting company that sort of specializes in things like Ruby on Rails. And they've been around forever. They're one of the most popular sort of Ruby on Rails web hosting. And the reason why I like to use them is because they have a free tier. And the free tier allows you to upload your stuff and have it live online. It's just not very powerful. Like not many people can like visit your website at once. It will be very slow, but it's free. If you then want to upgrade it, you can and start paying, at which point your web hosting becomes more powerful, more people can visit your website at one time before it gets slow and things like that. So for our purposes, for testing and for building cool new things, Heroku is great, so that's what we're going to use. So in order to sort of talk to Heroku behind the scenes from our terminal here, in order to push our Ruby on Rails code up, we need something called the Heroku Toolbelt. So we'll download and install that right now. So head back over to Google, and I'm just going to type in Heroku Toolbelt. And this is a little weird. It doesn't pop right up here. This is an ad for Heroku. We don't want that. We don't want the pricing. We want this Heroku CLI. And the website address is devcenter.heroku.com/articles/Heroku-CLI. And CLI stands for, I think, command line interface. So our terminal is a command line. So we need an interface to interface our command line to Heroku. So that's what we want here. So if you come down here, you see there's a Mac, there's a Linux version here. We want the Windows version. Likely you're on a 64-bit computer because pretty much all computers are 64-bit or higher these days. So we go ahead and click this to install. Same thing as before, we can install or we can download this anywhere we want. I'm just going to download it to my desktop. Click save. And boom, there it is. And again, you can navigate to your desktop and click it there or just click it right here. So we will open this. Pull this over. Now, the most important thing is to make sure this is checked. Set path to Heroku. And with Windows, the path is important. Path means we can run this anywhere on our computer. We don't have to be in like the Heroku directory in order to run it. So if you add it to your path, you can run it from anywhere, which is what we want. So it's checked by default, so you just leave it like that. Click next. Again, you can install this anywhere. Just take the default. It is 109 megabytes, so just be aware of that. And then here we go. It takes a couple of minutes to do this. It's installing all kinds of stuff. I see a bunch of JavaScript being installed, so it's another reason probably why we'll need Node in order to run this as well. So you need Node for everything these days, seems like. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while this finishes its thing. We'll pick it up right when it's done. Okay, so it says completed, so we can come down here and click close. Now we want to head over to our terminal here, and we want to make sure this has been installed. So I'm going to type in Heroku -- version, and it says right there, it gives us the current version that's been installed. So that means it's been installed correctly. If you get a command or a message that says like Heroku command not found or something like that, that means that it hasn't been installed correctly and you need to reinstall it, but you're probably good to go. It also might mean you need to restart your terminal bash, your bash terminal thing here. So I'm going to come up here and just click the X just in case. And then I'm going to come to the Windows Start menu that you can't see and type in Git again. and pull this over. Just when you install things like that work with this terminal, it's just a good idea to restart it, give it another start, just to make sure everything's been installed correctly. So that's it. Those are all the tools that we need to install Ruby on Rails. In the next video, we will jump right in, download, and install Ruby on Rails. Very exciting, finally. It takes a while to do this, but we're almost done, and we'll start that in the next video. Okay, so it is finally time to download and install Ruby on Rails. Now, you're likely going to want to go to rubyonrails.org. This is the official website of Ruby on Rails. And you can see right here, they have the latest version, 5.2.3. And you're going to want to just click this and install it like this. Don't do that. This is the sort of official Ruby on Rails. It's a lot harder to install. There's a whole bunch of stuff you need to do. It's just kind of a hassle. Instead, we're going to go to something called railsinstaller.org. And this is a Windows installer. I think there's a Mac version as well. And this is like an executable file that we can just download and install. And it does all the stuff behind the scenes that we would have to do normally ourselves, does it for us. And it's super, super useful. So we have a couple of different options here. We can do Ruby 2.2 or Ruby 2.3. Now, Ruby is the programming language that Rails is built with, Ruby on Rails, right? So it really doesn't matter which of these you download and install. This is the slightly newer one. It comes with Rails 5.1 versus 5.0, which is this one right here, versus the current version is 5.23. So you're not getting the absolute newest version, but we really don't care. I mean, until just recently, I was still using Ruby on Rails version 4 point something, 4.2 or something. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't have to have the highest, newest thing. But like everything else, if the version numbers change by the time you watch this video, no big deal. Just pick one of these. I'm going to go ahead and pick this 2.3, the latest one with Rails 5.0 or 5.1. You can see it comes with Ruby 2.3.3, Rails 5.1, bundler, Git. We've already got our Git Bash Terminal. It has Git installed already, so we don't need that. SQLite is a little database. We're going to have to talk about that probably in the next video. And a couple other things. DevKit, this goes with Ruby. So those things go together. And that's cool. So let's go ahead and just click this. Save it anywhere you want. I'm going to save it to the desktop like always. And you can see it is a little bit bigger than some of the other files we've downloaded so far. It's 112 megabytes. It downloads pretty quickly though. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it very quickly and we'll pick it up as soon as this finishes downloading. Okay, that was like 20 seconds later. There's probably no need to stop the video, but we can go ahead, same as before, navigate to your desktop and double click it there, or just click it right here to install. And we want to run this guy. Let me pull this over. And so we want to accept all of the licenses and all that good stuff. Click next. And I'm going to uninstall this, this checkbox right here because we already have Git. It came with our Git Bash terminal. So we're good to go there. We definitely want to add executables for Ruby, DevKit, and Git. If checked above to the path, we talked about path before. This means that, you know, we can run Ruby on Rails from anywhere on our computer. We don't have to be in the Ruby on Rails directory or whatever. Same thing for Ruby. We can run the Ruby programming language from anywhere on our computer, not just the Ruby directory. So we definitely need to make sure this one has been checked. So we can go ahead and click this button to install. Now, this is going to install 500 plus megabytes of stuff. It's something like close to 25,000 files. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes here. So go ahead and click install. And it's installing it in C Rails installer directory if you're curious. I don't know why you would be. Now I'm going to go ahead and pause this. We'll pick it up as soon as it finishes doing its thing. Okay, so it's completed the installation. We get this nice little screen here to end it. And we're good to go. We can go ahead and click finish and we're done. So now Rails has apparently been installed, but we're not quite sure yet because we haven't actually tried using it. And we'll need to try to use it by just creating a Rails project. So we'll do that in the next video. Okay, so we've installed Ruby on Rails, we think, but we're not sure yet until we actually run it once. And to do that, we just create a project. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to create a simple test project, not our main project, just to make sure that Ruby on Rails has been installed correctly, because a lot of times you'll get an error at this stage. And so I'm going to show you what to do if that happens as well. So I'm in my Git Bash terminal, and I should mention I closed this terminal and restarted it. I opened a new version of it, or a new instance of it, because Ruby on Rails the Git Bash terminal needs to be restarted in order to take into effect the changes that the Ruby on Rails installer just did. So if we come here to PW and type in pwd just to make sure which directory we're in, we see that we're in this directory here. We actually want to be in our C directory right now. So I'm going to change directory and type in C and pwd again to make sure we're in there. So now we want to create a directory to hold our new Ruby on Rails test project we're about to create. So let's go mkdir to make a directory, and let's just call this Rails test. Okay, so now we need to change into that directory. So I just type in cd Rails test and pwd to make sure we're in there. Okay, so the command to create a new Rails project is just Rails and then new, and then let's just call this tester. I don't know. So you can see, boom, it's creating all these files, and the first little message we get is we're not running the current version of the bundler, so we need to run this gem install bundler command. So we'll do that as soon as this whole thing finishes doing its thing. We probably don't have to do that, but you want to be on the latest version, so we'll just go ahead and do that. It looks like it installed an older version when we used the Rails installer thing. So what it's doing here is it's fetching all of the gems and all of the dependencies that we need probably from a website. Yeah, right here you can see from rubygems.org. And we'll talk more about gems and dependencies later on, but that's what's going on here. It's just going and getting all those files and making sure that they're either installed or updated or whatever. So this can take a minute or two. Now, I often get an error message towards the end of this, and I hope it happens this time. It doesn't always happen for some reason, but sometimes it does, and I'm hoping it does this time so that I can walk you through what you should do if you get an error. And there we did. We get that error message. So this is cool. Well, we can talk about what happens when you get an error, and it's not just for installation. You'll get errors a lot using Ruby on Rails because it's easy to make mistakes. And the important thing is to Google those errors. I mean, you can ask me while you're taking the course, but that's not the way you learn. You need to try it yourself first. And if you can't figure it out, absolutely ask me. But you're going to do a lot of Googling when you're using Ruby on Rails, so you should just sort of get used to it. And we can start right now. But before we even look at this error, I'm going to scroll back up here and let's see, grab this command it wants us to do. So I'm just going to highlight, right click, and copy, and then just scroll back down and right click and paste. And we just want to install the bundler thing. Say enter, and it lags for a second, and then it'll jump and do it real quick here. So we just sort of wait for a second, and it should do its thing, hopefully. Okay, successfully installed bundler 2.0.1. If it's a different version, don't worry, no big deal. Okay, so that's taken care of. Now let's look at this. So to see why this extension failed to compile, please check the make. No, we don't want to do that. Let's see. Let's just see gem files remain uninstalled. If we look through here, I'm seeing like right here, SQLite. That's a database. SQLite. That's a database. SQLite database. So obviously there's a problem with SQLite. And if we look through here, an error occurred while installing this, and bundler cannot continue. Make sure that the gem installs SQLite 3, blah, 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 succeeds before bundling. So now I know what to do to fix this, but normally you wouldn't. So what do you do? Well, you want to just sort of grab something that kind of makes sense to you in here and Google it. So like right here, I might say, make sure the gem blah, blah, blah succeeds. I might highlight this and click copy, and then just head over to Google and paste that in. And you're likely going to see a lot of Stack Overflow articles, and that's a great website. It will be your best friend. It's sort of like a social network for coders, and it's a place where you can go and ask questions and say, hey, I'm getting this error. What do I do? And people that have gotten that error before will say, oh, you just do this, and they'll tell you. It's fantastic. So we see this here. I would probably just click the first thing and start reading, right? They're usually a couple pages long and not too bad. Now, in this case, you can see this guy did the same thing. He's got all these things installing, And then this is not what we need, right? So, okay, we can go through and look at all of these, and maybe one of them in there will have a suggestion. I happen to know what's going on here, so I know that that's not going to do the trick for us. Instead, we want to come back here and let's look through here a little bit more. If we scroll up, we get even more error messages. Checking for SQLite. So we have this .h thing. What is that? Who knows? Here it says SQLite 3.h is missing. Install blah 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 first. It's telling us to download SQLite, the database. Now that doesn't seem right to me, but we can copy this at least and head back over to Google and see. If we paste that in, unable to install. I generally look for the SQLite. And this one I happen to know is probably the one. If I didn't know that, I would just spend, half an hour reading through all of them until I found the one. But we come down here and, oh, maybe this isn't the one. I don't think it is. No. Oh, you know what I often do is I'll look at the dates here. So it's 2017, 2015. These are no good. We want something more current, right? So I'm going to keep looking down here. I don't see anything. So let's see. Let's do this. There we go. One from 2019, right? So a lot of times, this is a lot more work than you'll have to do. Most times when you copy in your error message, the first thing that pops up is going to work. But for some reason, this particular one takes a little while. And so you'll just have to read through until you find the answer. But this is definitely the one we want. The latest one, 2019. And we can look through here. The guy's got the same error codes that we have. And you can see right here, here's the answer. Rails tries to automatically install the latest version of SQLite 3, but the new version doesn't work with Rails yet. So you need to specify an older version in order to run it. So we will just add this reference to our gem file, and you don't know what a gem file is yet, so you're not quite sure what to do. So I'm going to open up my SQLite or my Sublime Text editor and very quickly show you how to do that. So to add all of our new Ruby on Rails stuff to our Sublime Text, just go up to Project, and we want to add folder to Project. So now we just head over to our C drive, and we saved all that stuff in the Rails test, I think. Yeah, Rails test. And that, if you've forgotten already, is just this directory we're sitting in right here, Rails test, right? So we just basically want to open that directory in Sublime. So go ahead and click that. And then the Rails project we created was tester. So you just highlight the project. Don't click through it, just highlight it because we want to select the folder. And when we do, boom, 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 all of the Ruby on Rails files that we need show up there. So we want to come to the gem file, and I'll talk about what the gem file is more later on. But you see, there's this reference right here to SQLite 3. And this is what's throwing up an error. So instead, we want to come back to that website and highlight this and copy, and then just paste it in there, right? And up here, we want to highlight out the old one, or comment out the old one. Now I'm going to hit Control S on my keyboard, Command S if you're on a Mac to save it, or you can come up here and click Save. Now, we just need to install that. So head back over to our terminal. And since we're in the Rails test directory, we can hit ls to see what's in there. And we see there's that directory. So we want to change into that directory. Oops. CD tester / there we go. So you can see now we're in tester, right? And let's clear this screen. Now we want to type the command bundle install. This will install that SQLite thing we just put in the gem file. It will also make sure everything else is current at the moment, right? So, all right, fetching all this stuff from Ruby gems. We'll talk more about what all these things are later on. And if we look down towards the bottom here when it finishes, it should show us that version. There it is, SQLite 3 version 1.3. If we look here, we're saying install SQLite 3 with a version less than 1.4. And what we got was version 1.3, and now everything will work correctly. That error message is no longer necessary, and we're good to go. So we have correctly and successfully, I should say, installed Ruby on Rails. Everything is working good. We have our new little project called Tester. We're not going to use this going forward in this course. We'll create an actual new project. And in fact, that's how we'll confirm that this little fix worked. Well, actually, it won't confirm because we'll get that error again next time when we create our new project. But we know how to fix it now just by adding in this reference right here to our gem file. Whoops. At the time. So that'll be cool. And yeah, so we're ready to get started and actually start building out our app. So we'll start to do that in the next video.